What if love isn't just about two hearts, but the courage to face a family's deepest doubts? In today's emotional story, Toan's mother returns home after months abroad, only to meet Ly Tu Diem, the woman with a complicated past who now holds her son's heart. Will a single dinner and a heartfelt conversation under the moonlight be enough to earn the matriarch's acceptance? Don't miss this tender yet tense family encounter. Subscribe to our channel for more stories about love, family, and the battles we fight for happiness. Now, let's dive into this unforgettable evening. After months of business travel abroad, Mrs. Toan, the dignified and graceful mother of CEO Toan, finally returned home. The grand villa, usually quiet in her absence, seemed livelier that afternoon as news of her arrival spread. The air was filled with a mix of anticipation and quiet nervousness, especially for one person, Ly Tu Diem. She stood beside Toan in the living room, her hands gently clasped together, her heart pounding against her chest as the sound of approaching footsteps echoed from the grand hallway. When Mrs. Toan appeared, elegantly dressed yet exuding a firm aura of authority, Toan stepped forward, his voice calm but filled with pride. "Mom, this is Ly Tu Diem. She's the woman I've been waiting to introduce to you," he said, his hands softly resting on Diem's lower back, giving her strength through his touch. Diem took a step forward and respectfully bowed her head. Her voice, though soft, was clear and sincere. "Ciao ciao bac. Conrad vui kai duak gap bac hamne." Even if her greeting was simple, it carried the weight of all her worries and hopes for acceptance. She knew this was not just a formality, it was the beginning of a path where every gesture and word would be weighed. Mrs. Toan, upon hearing her son's introduction, looked at Diem carefully, her eyes sharp yet reserved. She had heard about her, not in detail, but whispers and fragmented stories about the woman who had captured her son's heart. A woman who, despite her gentle appearance, carried a past many mothers would frown upon. A woman who had once walked away from a marriage, who had known heartbreak and pain. Yet, standing in front of Mrs. Toan now was not a fragile figure. Diem stood with grace, her posture neither too timid nor too bold, her eyes lowered in respect but never losing their light of self-worth. Toan, standing close, was her silent pillar, his gaze quietly challenging his mother to see Diem for who she truly was, not just for the past she carried. The room, for a moment, held a delicate tension, as if the walls themselves were waiting to see how the first encounter would unfold. Mrs. Toan's eyes flickered between her son's firm expression and Diem's composed demeanor. She nodded slightly, a polite yet distant smile appearing on her face. "Welcome home," she said simply, her tone even but unreadable. It was not a rejection, but certainly not acceptance either. For someone like Mrs. Toan, acceptance was not given freely, it had to be earned, especially when her son's future and family reputation were at stake. She was a woman who had built her life and her family standing on discipline, integrity, and unblemished honor. A daughter-in-law could not be chosen lightly. But beyond the coldness in her eyes, there was also curiosity. What kind of woman, she wondered, could make Toan, her disciplined, often distant son, show such softness? What was it about this woman that had changed the man she raised with so many expectations? As the afternoon sun streamed through the large windows, painting the floor with golden patterns, a quiet understanding began to form. This was only the beginning. Whether Diem would be accepted or pushed away depended not just on this introduction, but on everything that would come after. Yet in that moment, with the faintest of nods and a glimmer of curiosity, Mrs. Toan had not shut the door, and that alone was a beginning worth holding on to. Later that evening, the grand dining room was filled with the aroma of warm, home-cooked dishes, a rare occasion that gathered the entire family under one roof. The long mahogany table, polished to a mirror-like sheen, was adorned with delicate porcelain, silver cutlery, and vases of fresh lilies, a favorite flower of Mrs. Toan. At the head of the table sat the matriarch herself, composed and elegant, her eyes occasionally wandering to Diem, who sat quietly beside Toan. Toan's elder sister, Tao, a woman with sharp wit but a kind heart, broke the ice first. She poured wine for everyone, her eyes crinkling with amusement as she glanced at Diem. "So, Diem, I've heard you love gardening. Do you have any favorite flowers?" Tao asked, her voice friendly, her curiosity genuine. Diem smiled, grateful for the question that eased the tension slightly. "Yes, I love roses. They're delicate but resilient, just like life teaches us to be." Tao chuckled, nodding approvingly, while the old grandmother, sitting further down the table, leaned in with keen interest. "A woman who loves flowers must have a beautiful soul," the old lady remarked, her voice raspy but warm. "Tell me, child, do you cook?" "My grandson can eat, but he rarely cooks for himself." Everyone laughed softly at that, even Toan, who shook his head in mock protest. Diem, her cheeks flushed slightly, admitted that she enjoyed cooking and often prepared meals herself. The conversation flowed easier after that. Diem listened more than she spoke, but every word she offered was thoughtful, her humility shining through without seeming self-effacing. Laughter echoed across the room, and for a moment, Diem felt she had stepped into a family scene she had only dreamed of. The grandmother recounted stories of Toan's childhood, of the times he had been stubborn, quiet, yet fiercely determined. Tao shared anecdotes about their father, long past, whose love for family remained a quiet legacy. Every story wrapped Diem in a tapestry of family history she longed to belong to. Yet, amid the laughter and warmth, Diem occasionally caught the stillness in Mrs. Toan's gaze. The matriarch smiled politely, but her eyes seemed distant, as if weighing every word, every gesture. There was kindness, yes, but also a reserved wall that refused to lower so easily. When the meal approached its end, Toan's grandmother raised her glass, her voice trembling but joyful. "Toan, my dear boy, you found someone who brings light to your eyes again. That's all this old heart of mine could wish for." Toan smiled and gently squeezed Diem's hand beneath the table. She looked at him, her heart swelling with quiet gratitude, not just for the approval, but for having him by her side in a room that still held shadows of uncertainty. Mrs. Toan, catching the exchange, set down her glass softly. She glanced at her son, then at Diem, her expression unreadable. Though she hadn't voiced opposition, her silence was a reminder that her acceptance was still a mountain to climb. The night ended with soft farewells, the family retreating to their rooms, leaving Diem and Toan a few moments alone. Standing in the quiet corridor, Diem whispered, "Do you think she'll ever accept me?" Toan smiled gently, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "She will. Just give her time. Tonight, you've already shown her who you truly are. That's more than enough for now." Diem nodded, comforted not by certainty, but by the unwavering support in his eyes. She knew this was only the beginning, and she was ready for whatever came next. As the house quieted and the night deepened, a gentle breeze swept through the garden at the back of the villa. The moonlight bathed the stone path in a soft, silver glow. It was there that Mrs. Toan asked Diem to join her, a private conversation that neither of them could avoid any longer. Toan had wanted to follow, but his mother's subtle glance told him this was a matter meant for just the two of them. Diem followed the older woman with measured steps, her heart pacing, yet her posture steady. The scent of jasmine floated through the air as they walked in silence for a few moments until Mrs. Toan finally stopped by a stone bench under the old camphor tree. She gestured for Diem to sit, but remained standing, her eyes fixed on the distant city lights twinkling beyond the garden walls. After a pause, Mrs. Toan spoke, her voice low but firm, without hostility, just an honesty shaped by years of experience and burden. "Diem, tell me the truth. Why my son? With your past, with all that's behind you, why would you walk into his life knowing the weight it would bring?" The question was not unexpected, yet hearing it aloud still struck a chord deep within Diem. She took a breath, composing herself, before meeting Mrs. Toan's gaze directly. "I won't lie to Basie," she said softly, yet with an unwavering steadiness. "My past, it's not something I can erase, nor would I pretend it didn't happen. I made mistakes. I was in pain. But I also learned what it means to be sincere, to love without expecting perfection in myself or others." She paused, eyes reflecting the moonlight, her voice gaining quiet strength. "I didn't plan to love Toan. It just happened. But once it did, I knew I couldn't walk away. Not because I needed saving, but because with him, I feel I can be better, stronger. He accepts me for who I am, past and all. And I love him for that." Mrs. Toan listened without interruption, her expression unreadable, though her eyes flickered with something, a shadow of understanding, perhaps, or simply contemplation. She finally sat down beside Diem, her movements graceful, yet heavy with the weight of a mother's protectiveness. "Do you know what people will say if my son marries a divorced woman?" she asked, her tone tinged with societal judgment that she herself perhaps did not entirely believe in, but could not ignore. "They'll talk. They'll mock our family pride. They'll say my son settled for less, that his mother was blind." Diem's hands clasped tightly together on her lap, but her voice remained composed. "I know, BAC. And I can't promise to erase the whispers or change their minds. But I can promise to stand by Toan, to build a life that is honest and worthy of respect, whether people see it or not. I only ask for a chance to prove it to you, not through words, but through the way I'll love and care for him." Silence settled between them, heavy yet not suffocating. Mrs. Toan stared at her for a long moment, her face softening just slightly. "You speak with courage," she murmured. "That is rare. Still, courage is not always enough." She rose, smoothing the folds of her silk dress. "I will not oppose you, Diem," she said at last. "But neither will I accept you just yet. Time will tell me if you're worthy of my son. Only time." With that, she walked back toward the house, leaving Diem sitting under the camphor tree, the night wind ruffling her hair. Though her heart felt heavy, there was no bitterness within her, only a quiet resolve. She had not been rejected, not completely. And sometimes, the narrowest crack in a wall was enough for light to enter. From the balcony above, Toan watched, his heart aching for her, but his pride in her growing even deeper. This was only the beginning, but with her strength and his unwavering love, he knew one day, his mother's heart would open.
Hello, xin chào mọi người. Vậy là tập phim ngày hôm nay của kênh Lý Tử Sĩ Ly Tu Diem tại đây. Nếu mọi người thấy tập phim ngày hôm nay có hay không? Nếu mọi người thấy tập phim ngày hôm nay hay thì mọi người hãy cho mình xin like và một nút chia sẻ video nhé. Cảm ơn mọi người rất nhiều đã luôn ủng hộ, theo dõi và để lại bình luận trên kênh của mình. Điều đó sẽ là động lực rất lớn giúp mình có động lực sáng tạo các nội dung tiếp theo hay hơn như của Ly Tu Diem và CEO Toan. Đặc biệt là trong các tập tới sẽ có sự xuất hiện đó chính là mẹ của CEO Toan. Liệu mẹ của CEO Toan có chấp nhận hay không? Tất cả sẽ được hé lộ ở tập tiếp theo. Xin chào và hẹn gặp lại. Bye bye.